Hey, and good afternoon, everybody. We have a packed house today, and we appreciate you joining us for our fourth webinar in the past 2.5 weeks to try to help you guys navigate this craziness that we're all living and where we can go for resources and help. We have a lot of information to share with you today, and I'm very grateful to the people who have agreed to join us and talk about what they know and see. And I'll just start off by saying none of us knows everything, so let's just throw that out there. Things are changing quickly, and we want to continue to be a resource, but we want to share what we know right now, where you guys can go for help in the industry. So first up is my friend Tom Wyatt. I'm very happy to see you and be speaking with you, Tom. Tom is the CEO at KinderCare Education and a great friend in the industry and support to us all. So I'm happy to see you, Tom.
Thank you, Kathy. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for including me.
So, Tom, you're in your home office and they're in Portland, Oregon, I guess.
I am.
Okay, so we're all doing what we can to stay connected, and we'll also be introducing shortly Radha Mohan and Reese Goldsmith, and wanted to have a conversation with Tom a bit first, and so we will get them online in just a few minutes. Tom, could you tell us, there they are, hi. So,
Hi.
Hey, Radha Mohan and Reese Goldsmith are with Brownstein Hyatt Farber Schreck, and they work on behalf of the industry. Radha is also the executive director of ECEC, and Reese formerly worked with the Small Business Administration. So we have a lot of information coming your way from them shortly. But Tom, let's get started a little bit. And could you, I know the community thinks a lot of KinderCare, and everyone's aware that KinderCare is our largest national operator of early education. Could you tell us a little bit more about yourself and KinderCare?
Sure. I've actually been with KinderCare for over 8 years now. It's been an incredible journey for us, and over those years, we've had the pleasure of growing our reach, both in new centers and candidly in the centers that we operated for many, many years. Last year, we celebrated our 50th birthday.
Wow.
Yeah, which is incredible. Started in Montgomery, Alabama in 1969. And I will tell you that on March the 13th, that Friday, Kathy, we were celebrating that we had more children in our centers than ever in our 50-year history. And then, of course, this all came down on us, and we've been managing ever since.
Right, and I think everyone that's connected here has experienced the same. It's certainly been with so many people working before this event, most everyone had full schools, and the biggest issue was hiring staff, and now we're doing some very fast shifts and trying to navigate where we are and how to look at the future, and I know that you are too. We're counseling our clients to look at this from a big financial picture and focus on the main things, which if you look at the structure, of course, of our financial picture, we have strategies around income. And if we strategize around our staffing and staff cost and our rent, then those are the three big things we should all focus on and start with in order to be financially healthy. So this time is no different than any other time. So if I were to go back up to the top of that in our income strategies, how are you thinking about, so you have 1,600 schools, and how are you guys thinking about whether to stay open or to close? And then based on those decisions, how are you thinking about whether to charge tuition or not?
Happy to answer that. We, after the first week, 2 weeks ago, after that week, came to an end and the impact that we felt from that week. We ended that week around 75% down from the March 13th. So March 20th, we were down to about 25-30% of our kids. Obviously different in many of the centers. Some were quite frankly still full. Many were down to 5-6 kids actually. Well, during that week when we saw that trend, we obviously said we have to make some quick decisions, some tough decisions. And what we decided to do was look at our portfolio of centers, and as the essential worker demand came up, and obviously in many communities, it was the only people that were allowed to even work going into the second and third week, we said, look, we need to take a real hard look at the location of our centers, and we did so through our real estate function. And we decided to leave open only centers that were within 3 miles of a healthcare facility, or any center that was very full from just essential workers. It may not be all healthcare. It could be grocery workers. It could be janitorial. It could be a number of different industries that were still being asked to work. So when we started the second week, this would have been Monday, not this last Monday, but Monday a week ago, we opened 428 of our 1,600 schools. So we closed close to 1,200 schools, 1,100 and change over the weekend. We asked every one of those center directors, obviously remarkably gut-wrenching decisions and messages to hand out on that Friday. But they were incredible people. They're mission-based, as all of you know on this call or this webinar. And every one of those center directors went in, they talked to their staffs, they did all the right things by them. They also sanitized, and over the weekend and the following week, put their center basically in a position to reopen by sanitizing each room, doing all the things that we need to do to be sure that when this is all over, those centers can come back safely and clean. So that was the very first thing that we did. We also have a before and after school program called Champions, and it was dramatically hit that first week. We have 600 some odd locations in Champions. And after the first week, because of the the school systems closing down so quickly, 533 of our 625 schools were no longer accepting children. So another large change for us. What we did relative to those impacted employees is we put them on what we refer to as standby. We wanted to do it that way because we wanted them to know we want you back. We want you to go home. We want you to collect unemployment at this point. We even set up an 85, over that weekend, we set up and trained 85 people to actually take phone calls from those displaced to help them sign up for unemployment. And that worked out very well. In fact, I got a number of incredible letters from people that we actually displaced, and they appreciated how we did it, which meant the world to us. So we went through that entire process, that end of that first week. And then we started that next week with those 428 actually centers open, and have since, we have a meeting on Wednesday, we have a meeting on Friday, and depending on the actual population of those centers, the occupancy of those centers, we have either left them open or closed a few, opened a few more. We're still around that 425 to 430 range. And we closed, I think, 10 last week and opened 17. This week, it looks like it'll be about 12 or 13 that will open and about 6 that will close. So that's the approach we've taken. As far as it's very important to talk about, as far as the centers that are operating, they're operating on a very different capacity than before. Our typical center is about 130 children. Today, that center, because of social distance and what have you, the peak capacity of those centers is in the 40 to 60 range, depending on the square footage and the number of rooms, because we are dedicated to social distancing in every single classroom. And that, by the way, is going well. I had a conversation this morning with the president of KinderCare, and he was very pleased that actually our enrollment is growing, and it's something we can manage. We still have 40 champion sites open, Kathy. The before and after school program is still robust. And we heard last night from the state of California, Governor Newsom, and there's one more state this morning, and I don't have clarity on which state that is, but 2 states have already closed the school systems for the rest of the school year. So that brings on other challenges for us, and we're looking at pivoting our school age programs, even inside of KinderCare, to more of a summer program, because parents still need those children cared for, and want those children not to lose the great scholastic development they've had, the educational and curriculum development that they've had through their public school system. So we're trying to think of ways to help that as well. So does that answer your question?
It does, yeah. Thank you. We get a lot of questions from people all over the country about, everyone else is closing, should I close? And really, I just think you have to make that decision on a case-by-case basis. And the answer to me would be, where are you? What kinds of jobs are your parents in?
Right.
And you really just can't make a blanket decision.
No, that's why we're still looking at every single center every single week. We have 130 DLs that have 10 to 12 centers each, and they literally get on a phone twice a week to discuss centers that are open, that maybe aren't getting the kind of enrollment that we think they should. And then we're also talking to others, communities, and this is very important. And I was so proud of the team this morning when I was speaking earlier. But we're going to open these other schools. And I said, the most important thing to me is that we're listening to our communities, and we're responding. These communities have come back to us, and these are families that were in our centers before. And they'll say, look, we've got 30 to 40 families that really want to come back to this center. Would you please open it? And the answer is yes. If we can get between 30 and 40 people in any one of our centers, we won't make a profit on that because of the additional help that we have to have for social distancing, as well as we actually put one of our displaced center directors in with the other center director for health and safety purposes. So it is truly a service that we're giving our communities. It's not a profit center for us at all.
Right.
But it's the right thing to do, because we all know we're going to live through this. We're all going to come back. We want to, be engaged and emotionally connected to our families, and that's the approach we took.
Right, great. And so I'm hearing you say that you are closing schools and opening schools as needed. So that's another question we get from people. We're closed now. Should we open again? Should we, so you're just making that decision as you go.
Yeah,
could you speak?
I had one quick thing, Kathy. I would urge, and I'm sure your members are doing this, the folks on this call are doing this, but I would urge you to stay in touch with your families. I would urge you to call them and say, hey, look, is there anything that we can do for you? That's how this little groundswell of, if you will, local community outreach has helped us. And quite frankly, what we've learned is the centers that we didn't think were very, very close to a healthcare facility or another facility that was important, distribution centers, what have you. Actually, there are people that live there and choose to commute to those jobs. So it was important for us to just keep our ear to the ground and stay connected to our families.
Right. We're hearing some very creative strategies in the community about staying in touch with families and children and staff. And the next thing we want to start working with people on is how to be better and stronger, and be sure that when we're open back for business that we're all doing the right things. Could you speak a little bit to your strategy about how tuition is being charged or not charged as you close or stay open, or how are you guys looking at that?
You asked me that earlier, and forgive me for not addressing that. That's a very important thing to us. And candidly, we've heard a very mixed bag from our competitors. Some people are, some people are not. We chose to do two things. We're not charging anyone for services that they aren't taking advantage of. So no one is paying us for this week, last week, or the last 3 weeks, let's call it. And that's important to me because families right now are going through horrific situations within their own household, within their own profession, just within their own families in some cases, as we know. So we felt like to add a additional stress onto anyone, and money is certainly a stress, particularly in this kind of a situation. We chose not to charge anyone any fees during this time. We also, just for the record, did not charge more for the centers we opened. We left the fees. If you use that, if that center was $272 a week for a 2-year-old, it's $272 a week now. So we didn't change any of that. On the other front, that it was actually very important to me, and I actually had a family reach out to me very early on, a police officer in Sacramento. He and his wife has just gotten out of the hospital. She's battling cancer. He is also ill at home, and as a police officer, neither able to work. They use one of our facilities for 2 of their kids. They pay us a lot of money for 2 children. And they got the impression that if they didn't pay us, which they knew we weren't asking them to, but if they didn't pay us, that their children may not have that slot when they came back. And I spoke to him personally, and we have guaranteed every single family member that was a participant in our centers prior to this event that they will have their seat when they come back. Again, it's just duress we don't want to put people through. We think it's the right thing to do, and we say that a lot in our company because we want to be a mission-based company. We want to help families. We don't want to create more stress on them, particularly right now.
Right. We do hear of others charging 50% or a certain amount to hold the spot. So I know there are different models out there, but thank you for sharing that with us. So did I hear you correctly that on your employee strategy, are you mainly laying employees off so they're able to collect unemployment, but you want them to know that you want them right back?
We are. That's the reason for the standby connotation. And let me tell you the number of different buckets that we have used for our employees. Standby is one of them, and that's someone that we are saying you should go home. We also, in our centers, we offered all of our staff, teachers, center directors, assistant directors, cooks, whomever. We also said, look, if you have a family member at home that you're concerned about, if you are concerned about coming to work, or if you have a health challenge that you feel you're vulnerable to this disease, please go home. No hard feelings. Please get on the enhanced unemployment, and we welcome you back the second that it's safe for you to come back to our center. So we did that as well. We also have done a number of other buckets, and I'll just share these, but and I'll start at the top and I'll work down. The executive committee, the people who answer to me, and the senior vice president group of our company, which is about 12 people, we gave up 50% of our income to the betterment, just to hold the company together, candidly. We also gave the other 50% up as well, and all of that is going to a fund it's a philanthropic fund that we have set up in our company called the One Fund. That is to help any employee in need. So we're dedicating the other half of our income to that. Every VP in our company, there's 40 of them, took a 50%, volunteered to take a 50% cut, and candidly, some of them gave up their other 50% for the One Fund as well, which was a beautiful thing. Then we get to the rest, and this happened in our offices here. Obviously, we're running a lot smaller organization, and we have 1,000 people that work out of our Portland office, and obviously don't have work for them. So what we did is we had essential people that we wanted to stay with the company, and we talked to them specifically. And those individuals, if they're salaried, are working on 75% of their income. If they're hourly, and there's a number of hourly people in our support center, in our office here in Portland, those were not affected at all. They get 100% of their income. And then the second one, which has been really great for us, whether it's accounts payable or risk or licensing or other areas that are very specialized services, we have gone to a job share where we've asked employees to work 1 week on and 1 week off. And that way they don't lose, the muscle that they've developed in their skill set. They have an opportunity to come to work and stay current. And so what those individuals do is they actually work for 100% of their income the week they work. And the week that they are off work, they get to go on unemployment, and they get whatever the state and, of course, the 600 the federal government has put aside for them that week. And that's working well for us. Give you an example. Every one of our DLs for the KinderCare brand, 130, are working as job share because all of them wanted to stay involved in the business, but obviously we couldn't afford to have 130 district managers only manage 400 centers. So trying to be realistic, trying to balance what we do, trying to be fair to our employees. The last thing I'll say is that even for our teachers, we obviously allow them to use their PTO if they want to, which is at full pay. And also we're still paying their health benefits for them during this time, even if they're on standby.
Nice. Nice. And that sounds like a great way to keep them engaged so they just don't go away and get isolated. Great. If we jump over to, so I just wanted to touch real quickly, we've got a lot of questions about the interplay. I will save this for Radha and Reese, the interplay between unemployment, the payroll protection program, and possible EIDL grants. So we'll talk about that in just a minute. I see a lot of questions popping up on that. Tom, we're suggesting to our clients that they work with their landlord on their second biggest expense, which is rent, or with their bank on their mortgage payments. And we have found some fantastic models. I'll just speak to, I happen to own a couple of childcare buildings personally. My tenant won't be paying me rent for 4 months, but my bank was perfectly prepped for me not to pay my mortgage for 3 months. So we made some, we worked it out so that it gets paid later over time. And no landlord wants an empty building. And, we want child care centers to be successful. So are you using some of the same strategies we're suggesting to people?
Yes, we are. And at this point, we're reaching out this week. As a matter of fact, I was on the phone yesterday with our largest landlord. We have a master lease with one person for 560 of our 1,600 centers. And it went very well. And basically, the model that we're using, no one wants to be in this position. And all of us know that we're going to get out of it. We just need to live through, when there's no tuition, there's no money to write checks for, right? So what we have set up, and so far the model has worked for us very, very well, is that we are asking for 3 months off of our rent payments, starting with April, by the way. We didn't pay April, and add those to the back end of the lease. And so far, so good. Even someone as large as that person, which obviously they have a huge debt service to take care of. And we had 2 conversations with them yesterday, and it turned out to be, I think, a win-win for both of us.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. We lots of questions popping in here, and I want to say, if I can, Tom, thank you for staying with us because there are some questions popping in for you, but I want to hop over to Radha and Reese. And first of all, for people who don't know, if you have more than 500 employees like KinderCare does, you don't qualify for some of the same relief that you guys are able to qualify for. So I'm going to speak a little bit to Radha and Reese about the options available to those of you who have less than 500 and those of you that have more than 500 employees. So let me start with saying that I mentioned that Radha has put together this fantastic slide deck for us with a lot of information, and there is a lot going on that will be options for the community. We want to encourage you guys to start with the 2 or 3 things that are the most important, and don't get overwhelmed by all the other things, and stay on top of those and act on them quickly. But I just said a little bit about you guys, Radha, but could you and Reese tell us a little bit more about yourselves and the work that you do on behalf of the industry?
Sure. So I'm Radha Mohan, and I also serve as Executive Director for the Early Care and Education Consortium. The consortium is dedicated to helping those in the childcare industry with major issues. Prior to the pandemic hitting, we worked a lot on things like strategies for inclusion for universal pre-K, workforce issues, and then help for assistance for working class families so that they could afford childcare. In the post-pandemic world, we are adjusting quickly and trying to figure out ways that we can ask policymakers to help those impacted by the crisis, particularly with a focus on the childcare industry. My background is tax law, but I specialize in education issues.
Sure, and my name is Reese Goldsmith. I'm an associate and policy advisor here at Brownstein. Prior to joining Brownstein, I worked at the Small Business Administration in their Office of Advocacy, working on behalf of small businesses, largely doing a lot of regulatory work. And then most recently with Radha, we've been working to track a lot of the developments in the CARES Act very, very closely.
Awesome. So Radha, knowing that there are so many opportunities and things to pay attention to, if you were going to advise, and like I said, we're assuming at this point that most everyone has a decent working knowledge of the grants and opportunities that are out there, although those are evolving daily, and even the administrators of those programs don't have all the answers yet. What would be your advice to navigate the most important 2 or 3 things to do right now to a company that had less than 500 employees?
Sure. So I think the 2 things to keep in mind right off the bat, if you've got less than 500 employees, are the EIDL grant and then the Paycheck Protection Program. The EIDL grant will give you up to it'll give you up to $10,000 in access to access to a fast cash infusion for your company. The EIDL grant can be used for up to $2 million. However, only $10,000 of that amount is actually forgivable, and that should give you access to the money within 3 days. As many of you may already know, the Paycheck Protection Program, that'll take a little bit longer in terms of the application process and everything else. So while you're waiting for your Paycheck Protection loan to be approved and working with your community bank or whoever you have a relationship with to process that, we do recommend that you start off with the EIDL. Is that right, Reese?
Yes, that is correct. And so one of the things I would note is, as Radha said, it's good to reach out to your existing lender. Also, the first day, according to Treasury, that applications can be accepted for these loans is tomorrow, April 3rd. And we expect those loans to be utilized very quickly. So it's very important to get in the queue. And additionally, when you apply for your Paycheck Protection Program loan, you can also refi that EIDL loan amount so that you benefit from that 0.5% interest rate that is in for the PPP loans. So.
Right. Okay. And so, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Well, to access the EIDL grant, you go directly to the SBA website. I actually did this earlier in the week because I wanted to do it for my company so I could advise well. It's a very simple form. I'll have to say that I believe I did this on maybe Tuesday and have not gotten no one's contacted me, so I don't know what to expect there. Would you guys have expected that I would have heard something?
No, so it really on the ground, we have been hearing the same story, Kathy. We have a number of clients that have applied for EIDLs, and they did so on Monday or Tuesday. It's Thursday now. They still haven't heard back. The SBA really is inundated with applications. So what we encourage all of you to do is apply as soon as possible. As far as the applications go for the Paycheck Protection loans, it's best to approach a lender that you already have a relationship with. Many of the banks that we have been speaking to have indicated that those are the customers that they will be prioritizing. We do have some sample materials that might be helpful, and I think materials and packages that some of the banks that we work with have put together. And if it's helpful, I think Kathy can pass some of those packages along. Right.
That would be terrific. And so our understanding is that if you receive the $10,000 EIDL grant and then go on for payroll protection, that $10,000 is just netted against what you would receive with payroll protection, correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's netted against what you would receive in forgiveness.
Yes. In forgiveness.
Correct. Okay. So
right. So it doesn't count against the cap on the Paycheck Protection loan.
Okay. Could you guys give us, and I think most everyone has heard a high level about how payroll protection works from multiple sources, but every source is a little bit different. And I just say that because I think people are still trying to figure it out. But could you guys, one, give us an overview of how it works mechanically, and two, how you suggest people navigate unemployment, well, not EIDL wouldn't fit into that, but unemployment and payroll protection in laying off or bringing people back, or what are the best strategies there?
Sure. I think we can speak to both. Reese, do you want to give them a high-level overview of how Paycheck Protection works, and then we can talk a little bit about the interaction with that, unemployment, and a few other programs?
Sure. So what they did for the Paycheck Protection Program is they expanded existing eligibility for small business loans to nonprofits, as well as companies with 500 or fewer employees. And so one thing to consider, though, when you're doing your 500 or fewer employee count is, are you affiliated with a larger entity? Because FBA applies this affiliation test and did carve-outs for certain industries such as franchises, but you still need to really think about that. That test is based on ownership and control largely, and the application that they have for that kind of contemplates that when they ask for ownership stake in the company. And then the maximum amount of the loan is $10 million. The calculation for your loan is for payroll costs, and 2.5 times of that payroll cost, because they're thinking about 8 weeks of payroll costs and then a little on the top to cover mortgage, rent, or utilities.
And Reese, if I'm not mistaken, you can't spend more than 25% on non-payroll expenses if you want to be eligible for forgiveness. Is that right?
Correct. So I think that the one thing to consider for payroll costs when you're doing that total calculation is it's not just wages. It includes your state and local taxes, healthcare, vacation and sick leave, retirement contributions. And so that wrapped up, and it creates a much larger amount.
Yes.
Right.
But when you're,
I'm sorry, but just
go ahead, Kathy.
just to be clear, you would take the average monthly payroll for a certain amount of time before this crazy world and multiply the monthly amount by 2.5. So the theory is that you would gain 10 weeks-ish of, or 2.5 months of payroll costs to keep people on the payroll. Okay.
Exactly, but payroll costs, again, if you do have more highly compensated employees, you would have to cap your payroll costs at about $100,000, and that calculation needs to be inclusive of some of the other things that Reese mentioned. So healthcare, vacation, sick leave, retirement contributions, all of that combined goes towards that $100,000 cap.
Right, so 100,000 per person is the cap.
Yes, per person, exactly.
Okay.
And for the purposes of the Paycheck Protection Program, you can use the cost on a number of things in order to qualify for loan forgiveness.
Correct. So you can use those payroll costs for, or that total loan amount for payroll costs, healthcare benefits, salaries, mortgage payments, rents and utilities, and also to note interest on other debt obligations that were incurred before February 15th.
And I think that one is particularly important. Again, it's a lot to cover in that 25% cushion, but if your payroll costs are your highest expense, you might actually have a little bit of extra cushion to cover some of these other costs and still qualify for loan forgiveness.
Yeah, so I think let's go back one slide just to talk about loan forgiveness and just noting, I think that we already covered this, but it's for 8 weeks of payroll costs, and that 8 weeks is counted for the 8-week period following the origination date of the loan. So when those funds are set by the bank for that loan.
And the other thing to mention over here is, Reese, correct me if I'm wrong, but the way a lot of banks have been looking at this is they're looking at the number of employees you have on the date of the loans or the date of the loan origination period. Is that right? Or is it the date of application?
They're looking at the date of the origination period. Okay. So if you want to bring those employees back on, I think it's something you can consider.
And to put a finer point on that, I know many in the industry have already gone through the process of significant layoffs. So when you're doing your payroll calculation amount, if you're looking at the 12-month period preceding the pandemic, that's something that you want to keep in mind, and note that if you do apply for the maximum loan amount that you're entitled to, you still can only spend 25% on non-payroll costs. So unless you're planning to bring all of those employees back, you might want to adjust your loan amount over there.
Right. And if you didn't use all of that for the for payroll and rent and utilities in that 8 weeks, it can then be converted into a loan, correct?
Yes.
Right.
Okay. Yes, exactly.
Whatever you use in that 8-week period for payroll related costs, utilities, and rent will be forgiven. So, and we heard you say that the best place to access this is to go directly to the bank you have a relationship with. I'm assuming they need to already be an SBA lender, or no?
So they are already approved SBA lenders. They're pretty broadly available. And what the Treasury is doing is expanding the number of eligible lending institutions. And my understanding is that all of the larger banks that you might have an existing relationship with are already contemplating this program. So if you already have that existing relationship, you should go to that bank first.
but they are, down the line, they are looking to expand the number of institutions that are able to provide this type of credit.
Okay, but we recommend that people do this very soon because it sounds like a lot of money, but it will go very quickly. We have a question that someone was told that it was any 8 weeks between February 15th and June 30th, but it is not. It is the 8 weeks immediately following you getting the money.
Yes, exactly. So if you don't get the money for whatever reason until May, then your 8-week period starts running. Say you get the loan, the date of the loan origination is May 1st, your 8-week period starts running from there. This becomes particularly important as you think about this in relation to some of the other relief programs that are available, Kathy. So this becomes really important when you're thinking about how to structure unemployment potentially, or whether you are thinking about taking the employee retention tax credit or payroll deferral. Because again, if you are thinking about the payroll deferral tax credit or the payroll tax deferral rather, or thinking about the employee retention credit, you aren't simultaneously able to take advantage of the Paycheck Protection Program, or loan forgiveness rather, under the Paycheck Protection Program. Where there is a little bit of gray area though is, what if I'm doing payroll deferral now or doing the employee retention credit now, and then my loan doesn't come through until much later? At that point, am I going to have to pay back the amount of the credit? Am I going to be disqualified from payroll deferral? These are actually open questions that we're waiting for the regulators to address. Industry's recommendation is that they be very flexible with this because people need money now, and in the interim, many people are choosing to try the other options that are available to them, and we suspect that regulators will be lenient in terms of how they interpret this.
Okay, so first two things to do for anyone who qualifies, which should be anyone with less than 500 employees, is go to, if you have a need for immediate cash, go to the SBA .gov website and apply for the EIDL $10,000 grant and begin immediately. Call your bank. Someone pointed out that the lobbies are closed. You don't have to be there in person. I've already gotten a sample application from my bank, but they said don't fill this out yet. It will probably look similar to this, but this is not the actual one. It has not come out yet. And here is the information we think that you'll have to produce, which is historical payroll information, which should be pretty easy for most of us. So I'm doing the same you guys are at Hinge. I'm trying to keep my support team on the payroll and keep them secure and find every resource that I can. So you mentioned a couple of the more sophisticated strategies that people might want to think about later. And I know that some of those are available for some of our guests who are here on the webinar with us that do have more than 500 employees. They are not eligible for the programs that we're talking about right now. But what would be your suggestions to those guys?
So a couple of suggestions over here. One is, I'll mention the Treasury fund at the outset. Right now, the Treasury, or the statute, the CARES Act, which was passed by Congress, mandates that Treasury create, or recommends rather, not mandates, recommends that Treasury create a $450 billion fund for those with between 500 and 10,000 employees. In order to be able to access a loan, not a grant. There is no loan forgiveness attached to this provision right now, and there are several covenants in place. For example, the statute mandates that companies have at least a BBB rating, or that they have to retain a certain percentage of their workforce for the duration of the loan amount. However, in talking to regulators, what we have learned is that when the Treasury Department, in conjunction with the Fed, sets up this fund, they will probably eliminate a lot of the covenants that you have been reading about. You know, we have been talking to the regulators on a daily basis, leaning on them pretty hard to get rid of the rating requirement and to eliminate the employee retention covenant as well. And we've gotten some positive indication that ultimately they will do this. We are still waiting for a final answer and you know, regulatory guidance from the Treasury in terms of how this fund will ultimately be structured. In addition to that, Kathy, in the meantime, what we do recommend is for companies that have more than 500 employees, you should definitely look into payroll deferral. This is something that is available for all employers, regardless of size. And what this allows you to do is delay 100% of your 6.2% of payroll taxes, and that's OASDI. And what this allows you to do is defer the payment in two installments. It's essentially, you would have to pay 50% of your deferred payroll taxes by December 31st, 2021, and the other 50% on December 31st, 2022. And sorry, I'm flipping quickly through the slides so you can see where that information is.
Okay.
In addition to that, the other thing that is available is also the employee retention tax credit. The employee retention tax credit is essentially equal to 50% of your employees' qualified wages per employee per calendar quarter. So really the maximum amount of the credit right now is $5,000 because you can only, the credit amount is capped at $10,000 of wages for all calendar quarters. But that is something else that is available to employers. It's essentially a $5,000 credit for each employee that you do retain. This is particularly valuable for either those that are waiting for their Paycheck Protection Program to come through or for those who are not eligible for paycheck protection.
So these two strategies are available to everyone.
They are available to everyone. The only hiccup in there is that you can't take advantage of Paycheck Protection Program loan forgiveness at the same time as payroll tax deferral or the employee retention credit. The open question is whether you can stagger the two, and that's what we're waiting for regulatory guidance on, though we suspect that the answer might be yes on that.
Okay, we are going to suggest that anyone with more than 500 employees get directly connected to ECEC. And for everyone else, we have been working with a team at ECEC to find a way to get all providers involved. And we got a little stall there in the last couple of weeks of craziness, but just know that these guys are in Washington acting on everyone's behalf constantly. This isn't new. They have been working for the industry for a long time. We're working together to try to find a way that Hinge can try to connect some of you guys with the work that's being done at ECEC. So stay tuned for that. Before we take
Kathy, sorry, if I can just add one quick thing. Kathy, thank you so much for the offer to connect providers with over 500 employees. That is ECEC's biggest push for the next month or so. There is talk of a fourth stimulus package, and really our #1 priority on that is making sure that the childcare industry is taken care of, particularly those with over 500 employees. And we are employing both a regulatory and legislative approach. We're considering everything from adding a NAICS code for childcare so that those with more than 500 employees can potentially take advantage of things like the Paycheck Protection Program. And then we're also looking at loosening the regulations around the fund created by Treasury. Other things that we're looking at are rent abatement provisions, you know, plussing up CCDBG, a separate child care stabilization fund. We're really going at this very hard. So if you are willing to lend your voice and your center count, your employee count to ECEC, that would go a very long way for us. So.
Right. So how might they do that then? Will you send out specific questions as you need information?
If you are interested in connecting with us, if you get in touch with Kathy, she'll give us your information. We definitely have some very specific information that we are collecting. Center count, employee count to start with, but then we are also digging deeper on your payroll costs, how much you pay in rent every month, your utility costs, because again, this helps us give lawmakers a better picture of the economic impact of the industry as a whole.
You know, Kathy, if I can say something to that point that Radha just made, and I would urge anyone who is in need of being a part of the 500, over 500 employees to get connected to Radha and the team at ECEC. They've done an absolutely phenomenal job for us these last 3 weeks and are absolutely focused on phase 4 of this. But as Radha just mentioned, the opportunity to create even a grassroots advocacy campaign and things that we're also looking into would be highly impactful if all of you came to be a part of it. So I just throw that out.
Thank you. Radha, you mentioned earlier that you guys could also be a resource to people trying to navigate, or it may not be you and Reese, but maybe someone in your company. How would they get connected there?
Again, if you send us your information, if you need help navigating the loan applications or you need help putting together loan documents, we have an entire team of attorneys that work on this sort of thing. So shoot Kathy an email and she will send us your information and we'll make sure that you get connected with the right people quickly.
Right. Before we take a couple of questions, how soon, and this, I'm sure this is just an opinion, how soon do you think we might see a 4th package come out?
That is the $1 million question in DC right now, Kathy. As you know, lawmakers are on recess until April 20th, but their staff are still working around the clock right now. We've heard talk of potentially an infrastructure package as part of the 4th stimulus bill. There's a lot of debate and a lot of issues that need to be hashed out right now on that 4th stimulus bill. It was very difficult to get agreement on the 3rd, and we imagine it will be exponentially difficult, to say the least, to get agreement on the 4th. But we are hoping that they'll start piecing this together later this month, and then hopefully get something out, that's ready for consideration or ripe for passage sometime in May.
Correct. And additionally, I think they're hoping to, as we see the 3rd package unfold, they already know they're going to have to plus up these small business loan amounts. So depending on the launch of this, it could create a more pressing need for them to come.
So there are a good many questions around, I laid off employees, do I bring them back for 8 weeks? And then what if I don't have the money and we can't open, or they're on, and do I pay them for 8 weeks and then I'm going to have to lay them off? How would you guys look at that? And what would be your, best guess? I'm sure that's a wild card, but.
Well, so I think that is often a case-by-case determination, but we do have our SBA rapid response team that we've got set up, and they are extremely helpful in helping make those case-by-case determinations, because I think it largely has to deal with cash flow.
Unfortunately, that is a case-by-case determination, right? Because for some people, if you've already laid people off, you might do your paycheck protection loan based on the number of employees that you currently have, and then allow the ones that you've already laid off to continue on unemployment assistance. We've seen other clients look at this and say, you know what, I'm fairly confident that by July or whatever that date looks like for them, things will have improved. I'm going to bring all my employees back. It's such a fact-specific determination, and we've had clients take a number of decisions on this front.
Right. Okay. We've got a lot of questions around the logistics of the PPP program. And what I'd like to just say is we will make this slide deck available to you guys. There's a lot of information in there about it, how it works mechanically. And there's some great examples, which I think we haven't seen yet. We also put a guidance piece on our Hinge website 2 or 3 days ago that gives you, I think, a pretty good view of what we believe it looks like today. The best place to start is to go to your bank immediately, like we said, and my bank has already said to me, we don't know about this yet. We're figuring it out along with you. So you will probably hear that, and that's okay. Just get in there with them and work through the process, because we want you to be one of the first people to take advantage of that. So since we just have a couple of minutes, Tom, if I could ask you how you feel about, we are hearing so many creative, energetic ideas out in the marketplace, people who are gearing up for an academic program for the summer because they know parents will be worried that their children miss things. They're really creative ways of staying engaged with families and staff. And tell us what, give us your view of what our world's going to look like.
Well, it's obviously going to be very different, Kathy, and we've got to be very, very nimble and very flexible to what that is. I mean, we live in a very emotional world with parents who are going through just an incredible, challenging time, and we need to be there for them when they come back. One of the things that I would say is right now sort of top of mind for me is, as we have all been seeing over the last couple of years, an influx of more and more infant and toddlers into our centers. And many of us have taken other rooms that we had for other age groups and turned them into infant and toddler rooms. And honestly, that was the right thing to do. And we will continue to do that, and we'll continue to ebb and flow as the demographic changes. But what I believe is a huge opportunity now is, given that many of these schools, if you will, the age group from 6 to 12 is going to be potentially out of school from mid-March all the way till September, that parents are going to want support. They're going to want different things to keep their children happy, soccer, ballet, things that they today are not, they can't go to, and they can't be a part of it. It's been a part of their fiber of their life for after school kind of programs. And then just through educational and academic development that we know we all want children to have and are being forced not to have it. I mean, I have 4 grandkids, and they're doing some online stuff with their teachers, but it's hard and it's not good quality, and it's hard for them. I shouldn't say it's not good quality. It's a great attempt to do something at a time that we can't be together. But children at ages that we manage and we deal with, their attention span's not that long. And we have a lot of teachers that are doing circle times on YouTube, and it's beautiful and it's lovely to watch. I looked at one this morning. So I would say to you, I got a little bit off my beaten trail there. I think there's going to be a huge opportunity in school age. this year and into next. I do believe many of your families who have younger children are going to want the other child in their family unit to come to the same place that their children come to, the younger ones do. So we're looking at really doubling down on school-aged in a very big way. The other thing that we're doing right now, and I'd urge everyone to do the same thing. I mean, the last couple of weeks have been very dark, very emotional and hard on us. I would say to you, what we're trying to do now is turn to building back to where we were. And we have a team of 7 that is literally looking at, okay, if we open June 1st, what do we do? If we open July 1st, what do we do? Because we want our centers to be there for the families when they come back. And we don't know how that's going to show up yet, but we're trying to get scenarios in place so we're not surprised when that opportunity and glorious day comes, that we're back to normal and families are trying to go back to their offices and do work and entrust their children with us. So a couple of things that we're doing. Planning for, if you will, the resurgence is a big one, and looking at what we can do for school-age kids this summer because school does not appear to be going back.
Great, thank you for that. We know that all of you and us as well have spent 100% of our time in crisis management the last 3 or 4 weeks, and we want to start moving that to getting some things in place and try to get to a 75 crisis, 25 planning for recovery in the future, all the way really quickly. I hope for you guys in the next 2 weeks you're in 25% crisis management, 75% planning for the future. We're going to commit our team. We're also working with Childcare Information Exchange on a new video recovery series for you guys to start to make yourself come back better and stronger and better prepared for children and families that need us. So thank you so much, Tom Wyatt, Radha, and Reese, for your very valuable time today. We're all very respectful of that, and we know that giving us an hour and more in the planning was very special. So thank you so much for being here. To our guests, we will have this recording on our website a little later today with the slide deck, and some of the questions that didn't get answered will come back to you guys on. So thank you so much. Be well, friends.
Thank you.